Hi, thank you for joining me on the Albion Yard YouTube channel. In this presentation we're going to be looking at this Bachmann Standard Class 5 and a few modifications we can do to it. If you enjoyed the presentation, please share, subscribe and like. Now I'm filming this in autumn 2023 and this model was introduced in 2005 or thereabouts, maybe a bit later, 2006. And even today the model stands in its own right as a very accurate capture of the prototype. This one, however, has a few detailed discrepancies, which is the idea behind doing this presentation and improving those and making it more representative of the class. Bachmann produced this model and somewhere along the production lines there was a mismatch of details. In particular, the tender and the locomotive. Now, the locomotive represents one of the first 49 engines, and we know that immediately just by looking at the rear of the cab here. It's got this handrail, there's a plate across the back of the cab, and these doors. Now, those only applied to the first 49 locomotives. The tender is an incorrect type of tender, and again we can note that from this handrail and this panel here and the high dome here. So this is a BR1G tender, and whilst they were matched with BR Standard Class 5s, no 1Gs were matched with the first 49. The other thing that is noticeable with this is the chassis and the coupling rods here. Those should be fluted, so they should have a H cross section to them. Now, none of the Bachmann models have that, so if you want to do one of the earlier ones, you either have to live with that, or there's an option which I'm going to explore whereby I can use Alan Gibson etched coupling rods. Now, he does them for the Standard Class 5, and I'm fairly certain he does a fluted set. So it might be that we can very simply change these out by undoing the nuts at either end here and the screw here and being able to replace the coupling rods. Other things that I'm interested in doing with this, the bogie wheels here, again Bachmann do a pretty good job. They do look a bit chunky though, but Alan Gibson does correct Stanier style 3-foot 9-spoke bevel edged wheels. So I'm aiming to put those in, and that again should really sort of make the locomotive start to sort of draw together to give it a more fine scale look. And having said that, Bachmann did a pretty good job, I think you'll agree, with the original release anyway. Another option that I have is close coupling. Now, the locomotive and tender are close coupled anyway, or it's on the Bachmann's close coupling setting. And you can just see underneath here this drawbar, and I'm going to see if I can poke into the back here, this drawbar here. I think I can shorten that, because when I do the tender modification to make this into a BR1 tender, this panel will come off, so it will allow me more room to bring the locomotive and tender closer together. There's also a couple of cosmetic buffers on the front of this beam here, and if I take those off, again because I use gentle curves on my layout, pico medium radius is probably about the tightest that I go to, I'm pretty certain that I can get the locomotive and tender to come together just that bit closer, to align perhaps these steps with the door better and really make a difference to the visual appearance on it. This is factory weathering. It's not bad, but it's very uniform and it's a bit heavy. The number, as you saw on the other side, and the number here, we've already seen, or we can see that a start has been made to get the numbering off. It's been quite aggressive, so there's some scratch marks there. I think that with a little bit of work, maybe some filler or some thicker paint and then cutting it back, I can fill those scratches in. Also on this side there should be an AWS box in here. Sometime in this model's life it has fallen out, so we can get a white metal casting and put one in. The speedo drive here, which is this pipe looking construction, that has snapped. That should join to this crank pin here. Now I could make one, but in fact they're available from Bachmann spares at the moment, so it will make sense to do that. And again, that will start to really sort of pull the appearance of this model together. In terms of the face of the locomotive, it's not bad. It's got that good look to it. The smokebox dart, however, here, that's a solid handle there, and I think again a brass one from Allen Gibson will probably make that look a lot better, improve the face of the locomotive. Couplings, I'll remove the couplings and those will be replaced with screw link couplings, and I think that will be about it. So what I'll do now is I will split the locomotive and tender, and we'll have a look at that join to show you what I'm aiming to do to improve the gap between the locomotive and tender. This then is the cab of one of these first class 5s, one of the first 49, and again you can see here the coupling rods, they haven't got that H section, so if we can change those, that will really make that pop. We've got this handrail that loops across the top and rear of the cab, and this steel plate here which helped in terms of keeping the footplate in one position, so the crew were always on one stable platform, or as stable as it could be. We can see here we've got the coupling, and you can see those 2 pinholes there. When we first saw the locomotive, it was connected into this first pinhole, which is the close coupling version. Now I'm pretty certain by taking this out, making another one, or buying one and re-drilling it, we can make this a lot better. Again, we can see on the cab side here, the number has been taken off by the previous owner fairly aggressively, so we need to smooth that out and work that in. So if I spin round to have a look at the tender, we've got the 1G, so it's got this tall dome. I might be lucky and find that that dome comes off easily. If it doesn't, then I'm in an interesting position in that it could be quite challenging to make that neat and tidy. What I'm hoping, however, is I can pop that off and then literally file down that dome to make it lower. We've got here on the front of the tender, I'll just spin it round, we can see we've got this panel with the handrail, so that indicates this as to be a 1G, 1 Golf tender. In terms of when I do the close coupling of the locomotive, these are the 2 moulded buffers, which I'm pretty certain once I cut those off, reduce the gap between the locomotive and the tender. Because I use at the worst pico medium radius points, because they're not too sharp, I'm pretty certain that that will enable me to close couple the tender and the locomotive, and that will really make the appearance sing. So in summary then, the aim behind this project is a very simple makeover of this fundamentally good design. It's a pretty accurate model. It's got these detail discrepancies that came with this particular release, and if you've not done a makeover before, then it's an easy starter for 10 if you like. Or if you've been in one of those sort of mojo-less periods that we all get from time to time, Again, a short, sweet project like this is the sort of thing that will get you going again. And I hope you enjoy it. I'll do a sequence of short presentations on these individual items, things like the bogies, cab close coupling, tender modifications. They're not big projects, sort of things that you could do each one of them in an evening in possibly half an hour to an hour at most. And then we'll take a look at the weathering and renumber it. It's going to be one from Shrewsbury, I think, one that worked on the Central Wales line because I like that line, and they had some of the earlier locomotives on there. I think it was number 36 or 32 was operating on the Central Wales line. So to try and bring this model into a accurate representation, or a much better rather representation of one of the standard class 5s. As I said at the top of the presentation, if you enjoy it, please share, subscribe and like, and please feel free to drop any comments below. Thank you.